So, fantastic. Obviously, on the screen in front of you, you can see the ARC360 corporate partners and partners. We've got ourselves ACIS, BMS, we've got CAPS, we've got Copart, we've got EMAX, we've got Integral, we've got Enterprise Rent-A-Car, we've got Nationwide Vehicle Recovery Assistance, and we've got S&G Response as our corporate partners, and we've got our partners, the Green Part Specialists in DARSA and Innovation Group. And a huge thank you to all of those companies who continue to support our efforts, and it's been fantastic working with them. And as per usual, our webinar disclaimer. I'm not ready to do it with my eyes closed just yet. We're only 19 weeks in. So views and opinions expressed during the following webinar are those of the individual contributors and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the contributor's employer, organisation, committee or other group or individual. As I've said before, please respect any all contributions, and we encourage you to join the conversation via the interactive functions available. So today's panelists, as I said, it's a repairer special. So we've got Rick Perry, Director of Ipswich Accident Repair Centre. We've got Richard Steer, CEO of Steer Automotive Group, who joined us very early on, actually, in the webinars and gave a great contribution. And we've got returning, after a few weeks off, we've got Chris Weeks, Executive Director of the NBRA. So let's have a little rally round and see how everyone is. So thank you very much for joining us today, everybody, and obviously yourself, Rick, Chris and Richard. As per usual, I'll give you the opportunity to just introduce yourselves and give us a little lowdown in terms of where we're at right now. So if I come to you first, if I can, please, Rick.
Hiya, yeah, it's Rick Carey from Manager Director of Ipswich Accident Repair Centre and co-owner. We have kept open the whole way through. We're a sort of independent body shop, BMW Suzuki approved, and so we're in quite diverse, multi-skilled staff, and yeah, just sort of trying to ramp the levels back up again, really.
All right, fabulous, thank you very much. And Richard, if I can come across to you.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're all well. Richard Steer, owner of Steer Automotive Group, 9 sites, sort of South Midlands kind of area, and obviously just managing the process through what are the still difficult and challenging times, unquestionably. And I think the outlook is still very, very concerning in terms of what we're faced with up ahead, given what's currently happening and going on. So.
Thanks very much, Richard. And Chris, we've not seen you for a few weeks, so just give us a little update on what you've been up to.
Yeah, well, in terms of our operations right now, good afternoon, everybody, and thanks ever so much, Mark, for inviting us back again. I think it's really great that we do these. So we're mostly concerned with like the here and now issues that are still here. I'm going to quote my new chairman, Steve Field, where he said, just because the snow has gone, it doesn't mean, everything's gone away. COVID, definitely, or certainly its effects have not gone away at all. And we're very much still in the eye of the storm as far as the body shops are concerned. So, there's a lot to be said about that. We're in the process of contacting all our members, one by one, checking they're okay, checking they're getting all the messages, helping them out with issues and challenges. There's a lot of worried people out there, is the main sort of thing that we're getting. We've had some tremendous feedback in terms of the support that, we've provided, and other, bodies as well, including Vision and various other things. But, it's a very lonely place, from what I can tell, for repairers running businesses at the moment and trying to make decisions that they've never had to make in their entire working lives. Aside from all that, we also know Q4, Q1, next year, it's going to be very, very tough. And we are, as an association, are really busy getting ready for the future. We know it's going to be tough next year with VAT repayments and, continued lower volumes. So we're really getting ourselves organised to, make sure that we focus all of our attention to membership support, because I think they're really going to need it, and taking away some of the fluffy stuff. So yeah, and of course there's Brexit coming, as if the spectre of everything else wasn't bad enough. That's coming round the corner as well. It looks like July's deadline for that is going to go past without an agreement. And as it was reported in the Telegraph yesterday, it's likely we're going to have a no deal and, maybe heading for World Trade WTO terms. So we're going to have to get ourselves set up for what that means for members as well, and making sure that we're fighting their corner and making sure everybody's, properly informed. So that's kind of where my head's at the moment.
And that would signal it's all over the place, Chris. But It sounds like you've got yourself a busy job for the next 12 months at least. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, we've got plenty on.
All right. So again, as per usual, what we'll do is we'll just have a look at the data insights from last week. So again, this is the integral insights that we received. So the activity heat mapping. And again, this comes via courtesy of Ollie Chambers and the team at Integral. So again, the data is pulled from enterprise customers, i.e. those claims requiring an enterprise rental, which equates to about a third of all claims, plus the addition of its own claims business data, which handles claims for brokers. So there's, if you like, the heat map. Obviously, the darker the colour. If you like, the more claims activity. So again, it's kind of that M1 corridor, if you like, London to the north, Manchester, Liverpool, and it signifies a 15% increase week on week in terms of claims volumes. Again, cast our minds back, I think that was a 7% decrease last week, so 15% up on that. 76% increase month on month claims volumes, 7% of volume coming from new hotspots, and we'll talk about those in a second. Claims spread over 354 postcodes now. So again, that seems to be increasing week on week. And the new hotspots, Cannock, Monmouth, Stansted, Exeter and Boston. And by postcode, WS11, NP25, CM24, EX5, PE21 and LS19. And in terms of top 6 volume postcodes, G58, E12, ED1, PA3, S60 and KY1. So there we have it. There's our little roundup. And let's just come back. So I'm going to come across to you again first, Rick. So you gave us a nice brief introduction, but give us a little bit more of an insight really into where you are right now in respect of your own operations.
Okay, we when obviously everything went into lockdown, we sort of knew it was coming a few weeks beforehand. So we stockpiled work a little bit. We do some of the NHS contracts, ambulances, so we had stuff like that sort of in hand. So we decided to stay open. We openly spoke to the staff and those who wanted to go on furlough could do. We were trying to gear about 50%. For the first month, we had a month's worth of work on site by sort of halving the staff. We saw levels in May and June obviously drop off, start to pick up through June, and now we've sort of got to the 1st of July and we're now starting to bring some of the staff back on a part-time basis. We brought quite a few back last week, but we found we worked through the bubble of work quite quick. So we've put some of those back on furlough. I don't think there's anybody coming in workshop side to help us out at the moment. We have seen an increase, but we're quite diverse in the work we do. We've got several insurance contracts, mostly on the prestige side. We do motorhomes, caravans, that type of stuff. So a bit of race car prep. So it's handy that we've probably got quite a few jobs that most other body shops aren't getting at the moment to help us maintain a little bit of a volume. We're still way off, I would say 60-70% of what we normally would expect for this time of year. But the furlough scheme's working well, and at the moment is sort of safeguarding us. But we're obviously looking to when that finishes to what we go back to the normal, what we call normal again, going forward really.
Okay, and you mentioned you'd obviously made sort of a few changes late last year, earlier in the year anyway, in terms of the business. You suggested you'd sort of streamline things anyway. So by default or design, perhaps you were arguably in a better place than some anyway.
Yeah, last October we changed paint. We changed the speed set, which really suited us and the painters. We had a couple of staff personnel changes, brought in a couple of really good staff, and we were looking from October to March, probably 15% above last year. but we were starting to get in February, March. We were struggling to feed enough work in the workshop. We created too big a fire because of our efficiencies were better. So we were probably overstaffed, possibly thinking of cutting back 1 or 2 staff, which is a bit unfair because they're all doing so well. To then go and cut it back a little bit. But, you know, when you're sort of chasing new work to try and keep the workshop fed, that's quite a dangerous position to be in.
Okay, great stuff, Rick. Thank you very much. And Richard, over to you in terms of, you know, what's the here and now within your own operations and you know, the very near future, if you like.
It's been really odd times. You know, kind of assumed at each stage of the lockdown we'd have seen an increase in the volume of work, but it seems that doesn't automatically trigger that immediate increase. There seems to be an increase in terms of the time between accidents are happening till they're coming through as referrals and jobs for us. So there hasn't automatically been the pubs have opened and then Monday morning there's a load of work. There hasn't been. There's been a bit of a lag, and it seems to have kind of gone up and back down again and then up again, but plateaued. And we've definitely seen a month of plateauing. So we would reckon we are factually 62% in terms of our normal referrals, normal for this purpose being our January number, and we have 52% of our staff in the business. So we initially took the view that we'd close 5 sites, keep 4 open, and we had about 40% of staff in those 4 sites. And then we made the decision to furlough some more staff on the 10th of June, which was the last day for new entrants to the furlough scheme, because we didn't feel that the referral numbers coming back were at the level they need to be. We'd already opened all 9 sites in the middle of May, so we were fully operational as a business. And the challenge is now is the plateau is there and not showing any signs of increasing. And I don't expect that to change anytime soon with August, given what normally goes on, you know, staycations or not. There's still an awful lot of people, you know, no schools reopening. A lot of people are still being encouraged to stay at home by the employers, despite what the government is saying. And there's a lot of people still being furloughed, and a lot of unfortunately lost their jobs as well. So there's a real mixed bag out there. But the collective piece is I don't see it changing from where it's at anytime soon in any market sort of sense. I think the next trigger point will be September when the schools come back. So the middle of September is going to be a natural, very keen view we'll keep on what's happening then. And also, obviously, when the clocks start to go back towards the end of October, start of November, which is typically an automatic spike within the referrals, purely because that's what happens that time of year. So those are the immediate trigger points. But you know, the new normal, which everyone's talking about, I don't see anything starting with an 8. I don't see anything starting with an 8 will be where it's ultimately going to end up. And that's the biggest overall concern.
Thanks, Richard. I'll come to you in a second, Chris. I'm just going to launch a poll, so get people involved out there. And Richard already alluded to it in terms of August. So we've termed it as summer holidays. So what are your expectations for the summer holiday season? So we're talking school terms, continuing upward trend, no change to the current situation, or even will we be faced with a slowdown? So whilst that's going on, Chris, I'll come across to you from a wider perspective in terms of what you're hearing out there in the industry. Again, you know, does it kind of support what Rick and Richard have already alluded to?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, you know, like he said, you know, claims are around sort of 60% mark. Even though like fuel, we get fuel data here, and you know, sales are about 80% of pre-COVID. But you know, the rush hours seem to have flattened out, so the roads are less congested. So even though there's quite a lot of fuel usage out there, much of which is commercial, by the way, you know, as people have switched to home deliveries and, you know, shopping online and stuff like that, we're not seeing the private use out there that we were. Yeah, and I agree sort of with Richard's sort of view of the future as well. You know, I mean, August, I guess the one good thing there is the government is trying to encourage people to go back to work, working from home. Yeah, I know that was to boost the economy, but it might well help our industry as people get back out on the roads and start meeting people again. Obviously, in August, there's the national insurance contributions as well, which might bring a few people back to work. September, you know, that steps up a little bit where employers have to make up the 10% of the 80%, which is equivalent to about 300 quid. Plus the school's going back, so that might have an impact. So that is going to be a really critical time, I think, for body shops that are starting to think, well, what am I going to do? The cost of redundancy, as Richard alluded to, is extremely high. That would be an enormous impact, and I don't think a lot of body shops have really given that some consideration. At the MBRA, we're going to do a piece on that to really be clear about, how you might select people, what the costs are going to be, what the implications are, and everything else. But it's a real tough time, and there's nervousness, I would say. So, we're just going to have to wait and see, and keep on staying informed through forums like this, and all keeping each other sort of clear in terms of what's happening.
Okay. All right, so I'll just share the results. What have we just found out? So continued upward trend, 22% believe that will be the case. No change to the current situation, 61% believe that will be the case. Slow down even further, 17%. So some numbers there. So Rick, does that kind of, I say it to support what you're thinking within your business and potentially, the moves you've got planned for the coming few weeks, months?
Yeah, August, I think because we vary our work slightly, August affects us usually less than most body shops. But, it's different times at the moment, and I can see people sort of starting to get a few holidays and having brave and going abroad. The roads definitely, as Chris and Richard said, the rush hour traffic's not there. We can get off our industrial estate so easy in the evenings that we couldn't do beforehand. So we're right out sort of virtually in the countryside as such, so we're not really a city based. So I think volumes will be fairly, stay as they are, possibly even a dip off during August for us. So, we use the flexibility of the furlough to manage our staff, the right amount of work coming through the door.
And projecting that forward, so a little bit more into Q3, Q4, how are you, again, the crystal ball moment that everyone's looking for, but how are you sort of planning for that?
Yeah, I think we don't overly know. We probably think we'll be sitting 60, 70. We're hoping we get back to 80%. And I don't think we want to gear the business to be any more than that going forward. I think the furlough scheme is brilliant at the moment, and that's it's probably saving a lot of businesses, I think. As mentioned by Chris, the redundancy is going to hit people. Certainly during October, you're going to get to this point where you've got people on furlough and they've signed to go on furlough. Do you do the moral thing and do it right and make that redundancy at a massive cost, which if you've got to make 3 or 4 people to work for you, been with you for 10 years redundant, you could wipe out a year's profit in a good year, let alone a bad year. Or do you say, well, why can I give you 3 days a week and hope they get a job somewhere else? I mean, they've got mortgages and family, to look after. What's going to be the right thing? How's your conscience going to be going forward?
Yeah, no, some real tough decisions out there. Now, Richard, I'll come across to you in terms of, the same, if you like, question. So August, you've just seen the poll that was up there. Does that align with your thinking again, going into Q3, Q4? How are you kind of structuring, planning? I think somebody on the webinar last week mentioned that they've been through 3 or 4 business plans already this year. Does that tie in with where you're at as well?
Well, first off, there's no book. You don't get to week 16 of COVID crisis and flick through your manual and go, okay, this is what to do. Or some sort of study's been done. Some McKinsey study's been done as to what to do in the event of a global pandemic for the body repair industry. And the key is we're all in this together. It doesn't matter whether if you're an employee, an employer, an insurer, a supplier. I mean, we're all, this ecosystem relies on everybody. We all can't do our own jobs. I don't insure people. They don't repair cars. your suppliers don't fix cars, they don't insure. So we all rely on each other, and there aren't winners out of this. Although it's very easy to go, well, the insurers are making more money right now because they're not writing out, and that's a statement of fact. But equally so, if you look at over the years, the money that they haven't necessarily made out of it, maybe there's some time for some return there, and also that might be leveling the playing field going forward in terms of the opportunity for repairers to earn more money from repairing cars. The challenge you have at the minute is, if you take the fact the staff you assume that you've got back are your more efficient staff, if they're capable of doing 10-15% more than the average, then ultimately you're going to require fewer staff going forward, wherever this ends up, and it won't be back to 100%. And unfortunately, the sad piece is that the demise of repairers through the financial impact of this crisis will mean that there'll be opportunities for other repairers out the other side of it as well. So, if in simple terms, if claims are at 80%, but 25%, heaven help us, of repairers went, then in theory, then you've got a demand and supply issue coming back again, loud and clear. Because what's very evident in this industry, and I've only been on this side of the fence for the last couple of years, is that if I can repair 40 cars a week in Aylesbury, I can't repair 80. It just doesn't work that way, So you've got a kind of a capacity amount you can reach, which obviously we're striving to get back to. And at the minute, we're some way off that. And I don't see a material change. On one hand, you have the government saying go back to work. And on the other hand, you have RBS announcing, as one employer, 50,000 people to stay at home. State-owned businesses, they're actually, partly state-owned businesses, they're actually telling people to go home the same week the government is saying go to work. What's the mixed messaging that's going on here? So I see the next few weeks as being at best flat, at worst a slight drop. And then I think that the big kicker is really the schools and how ready the public are to send their children back to school and what state it's in. And of course, all the time in the background, we're all looking on the horizon, and are we seeing a big grey black cloud that is wave 2 that they keep alluding to, and what that's going to be, and whether they can contain it locally because of test and trace. All of those things are going to have an impact. And the crystal ball gazing, if someone's only done 4 plans, then they're probably about half of what I've done. So literally it's very fluid, very, very fluid, and we are having, we're not trying to overanalyze it, because ultimately it's very changeable, but we're all in this situation together, and long may that continue, because obviously the more we can support each other through what we're going through as an industry, the hopefully the better it's going to be for the long term, because we all rely on each other. We all have to be. We all rely on each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And Chris, in terms of the feel from the market in general, like you, I speak to plenty of body shops, and there's some who are, kind of taking on new sites. That hasn't happened overnight. That's been in the pipeline for a long time. It just so happens that it's kind of fallen now. On the flip side of that, there's people telling me they're getting numerous job applications for jobs that they haven't kind of, got or are marketing. There's talk of, certain businesses going through redundancy processes and streets. So it's a real kind of mixed bag out, or it certainly seems to be. But, what would kind of your take on that be, or those who would, argue that actually the industry, is doing okay kind of thing?
I think some are accidentally doing okay, because like Richard said, they've got their highly productive staff in. We're in a bit of a bubble, where they've had their VAT payments sort of deferred. Some haven't even paid sort of PAYE to HMRC, so they've got that little bubble building up. And then you've got your job retention scheme, which is, keeping sort of people at bay, and you've got the flexibility of working that's been in place since July. So there are some that are actually doing, proportionately from a sort of a net margin point of view, better than they ever have done before. But they're typically the smaller repairers that are kind of in that space where, that they're less susceptible to the impact of, the swings of claims levels. If you're part of a big group, they're massive machines to feed. And they just need that sort of to continue, and at 60%, it's just not sort of coming through. There's a lot of headwinds coming at the way of the body shops as well. We've got this continued claims volumes challenge, and like I say, no one really knows where that's going, but it doesn't seem to be sort of kicking up anywhere quickly. You've got the erosion of the job retention scheme, and that is going to start, coming around people's necks like a bit of a noose. when they're starting to have to contribute towards the staff that aren't working at the moment, and then they're really going to start thinking, Christ, what am I going to do? Lots of body shops haven't given any thought to the cost of redundancy at all, and that, that's something that people are going to have to do. They've got those sustained losses that they've had to pick up throughout the period where they were shut down, or they only had 20% of the work, so the cash is depleted. And of course, as Richard said, people are worried about this second wave. I know Europe feels like, we're in a better state than we were, but the rest of the world, globally, the pandemic is worse now than it ever has been. Yes, we're getting better at dealing with it. And yes, if there's outbreaks, they're more likely to be, controlled locally with local shutdowns like we've seen in Leicester and Bradford. We've become better at managing the infections. But it's still a considerable concern. What really worries me is, there's all kind of various sort of views on how much support repairers have been given through this. Calling it support isn't necessarily the right word, but in an open market, body shops have been forced to charge quite a lot of money through this in order to survive. The great news is, through the support of Vision and the various other people that really fought hard to try and get things, there has been concessions in terms of parts discounts, anywhere between sort of 5 and 15% in one instance, or some have gone with that in place of COVID charges. Some have gone with some quite decent COVID charges, not necessarily enough to sort of make a massive change, but there've been something. I'm enormously concerned that they will start to evaporate. I was on a call the other day, or webinar, with David Nichols, who's the Chief Claims Officer at Zurich. And, thank goodness, he said, I've got no intention of pulling the aid packages that he's got in place for his repairers. He very much was of the view that, a strong supply chain is much better than having to deal with the consequences of a depleted supply chain, call that repairers. And thankfully, he's taken a really, really sensible view that they're not going to be pulling their concessions anytime soon. And I very much hope that is the mentality that we're going to see in the rest of the market as well. I really do, because now is not the time, to start putting away support for repairers. It really isn't.
Absolutely. And also, on top of all of this, Carlisle kind of publicly announced, Nationwide is up for sale. And it's not our business to drill down into that, but does that have implications across the industry as well? Does that settle the industry even further? Sorry, Chris. Yeah. The Carlisle is, the Nationwide. There's loads and loads of rumours. I don't think we'll ever know what's going to. What could happen? There could be a big buy. That would be interesting if that ever happened. If Nationwide got bought out and a big chunk of the ABP top 40. That would probably be something that would be quite helpful to the industry. But currently, we've got oversupply. Claims are down. So there's too much capacity in the market. If Nationwide were to sort of go, I don't know if that would be a really terrible thing for the market right now. It'd be awful for Nationwide and the people that work there, obviously. They could trade out of trouble. It just, it's hard to know exactly what's going to happen. But, there's definitely, I'd imagine, lots of businesses that would be quite keen to pick up bits and pieces. There's all other issues in there, isn't there, around sort of pensions and stuff like that, reported to be 32 million hole in that. I don't know. It's going to be really, really interesting. And I think the whole market, quite frankly, is watching the Nationwide Carlisle piece very, very closely. Very, very interested in how that sort of turns out. Absolutely. All right. Now, I just want to move across to relationships. We've already mentioned those. So I'm going to get another poll up and running. So let's launch that whilst we talk. So in general, how are your key supply chain relationships evolving? Continuing to evolve for the better? We've kind of found the new norm, if you like, or they are increasingly challenging. So we'll let that one run. Richard, if I come across to you on that, how are kind of your relationship moving in terms of this with throughout the supply chain. So whether that be, your abrasive supplier, paint supplier, through to, the work relationships with insurers, how is it all kind of evolving and merging together and moving on, really?
Well, I mean, in the main, I think it's actually been really, really good. Not necessarily just automatically looking for positives, but unquestionably, it has brought us closer to our clients, and the communications have improved both ways. I think they've really appreciated the updates and the information we've been providing. The fact they recognise we're trying to work hard to still provide a service. I think I saw one comment on a customer service satisfaction survey said, COVID isn't an excuse for bad service, which I thought was quite interesting given some of the challenges we'd had. But maybe it isn't. And the truth of the matter is that we've had some challenges with some SLAs, but our SLAs are actually improving. Partly because obviously the flow of work is there's less work on site, which means you get better efficiencies from that. We've had no issues getting our wet and dry type products, and LKQ and Euro car parts have remained open through the full time. I think the dealership reaction and the dealer community, they had different drivers obviously in terms of what their situation was, obviously around lockdown and obviously being more in the retail space and having to close the dealerships. But I thought, their reaction around parts supply created some massive challenges from us early doors. That kind of came back. But our parts margin has unquestionably suffered in the last 3 months. Even taking aside the allowances that have been made, the management accounts I've seen have said in every instance, our parts margin has gone backwards by a significant amount of points. And why is that? Because basically, and that's just on obvious hard cost, I buy and sell. That isn't without including the cost of collection and delivery, payment up front for parts, which we'd never do before. We've gone 70, 80, 90 miles. But then we've had some of our clients have said to us, well, if you're facing hardship through that, then we're prepared to step in and pick up some of the cost for that as well. And that has really been appreciated. And it's a genuine sign of us working more closely together. Around our dealer relationships with our parts suppliers just generally, not as good as they were, because ultimately there's been delays in getting parts, the wrong parts have been delivered. They're obviously only just open with skeleton staff as well, so we're often having to collect rather than having stuff delivered, but we're not getting a margin improvement for that, so we're just adding cost into our chain, delay into our chain. So those are sort of different dynamics that sit within there. But I've welcomed some of the elements of the new communications, and I really do appreciate the fact that our clients have worked hard to try and get authorisations through. They've got staff on furlough as well, so some of the network teams are under a lot, engineering teams are under a lot of pressure as well. And it's easy to say, well, why didn't this come through quicker? You can't be so busy, but they're not. But they are busy because they've got their staff as well. So it's a yin and a yang in terms of where that works. So from our side, I've been pleased with that. And the fact is, what was initially a major concern for us was about the fact that our debtor days exploded upwards in a very dangerous trend, which we addressed through June. And I have to say that we're getting paid an awful lot quicker than we were. I'd still like to tidy up some of the really old stuff that's still dragging around and normally be a bit more involved. But the stuff that we're currently charging for, we're getting paid in a timely manner, and that's really appreciated because cash is still going to be king with this whole piece. Cash will be king through the whole element of what we're going to be going through, and making sure that we retain as much of that as possible within the business to manage what we're going to be faced with in the next few months.
Okay. And in terms of, just looking at the results, so you can see the results on the screen there. So continuing to evolve for the better. Fantastic, 51%. Say that's the case. So we've found the new norm. So settled 28%, increasingly challenging, unfortunately 22% are still experiencing that. And Richard, in terms of relationships with fellow repairers and things, are you talking to more repairers now? Do you find that happening as just knowledge sharing and this kind of stuff?
I think perhaps slightly more uniquely placed in some respects is obviously I've been a supplier to a lot of these guys for an awful long time, so I kind of have a sort of double-edged relationship with them in terms of being somebody who's in the body shop space who historically was in the supplier arena. I've been really, really appreciative of the support and that's been held out to me from fellow repairers, and advice, assistance, what problems they're sharing, and also as well the openness and the transparency with which that's been provided. So on a personal basis, it's been really welcomed, and hopefully if anybody's reached out to me, I've been able to give them the answers. I tend to deal with pretty straight, as people know. and I've really welcomed the opportunity for them to share some of their experiences. And also, it's just problem shares, problem halved is the old expression, and I've definitely found that in certain instances. And also just finding what their norm is. How are you dealing with this? How are you dealing with that? What are you finding with this? What are you finding with that? So all of those things have definitely helped. So communication has been one of the biggest things from this. I miss the face-to-face stuff. I miss the get-togethers, because I think Zoom and Teams have a place, but I don't think they're necessarily the be-all and end-all. And I think a lot of us are getting pretty zoomed out. And a lot of those quizzes and social catch-ups have all fallen by the wayside as we come back to norm, and we start to see people. And I welcome the chance to get back in front of a lot of people. I'm looking forward to some of the networking events opening up again as the year unfolds in front of us, and getting a chance to get back and start to talk properly to people rather than doing it down a computer screen.
Absolutely, it will be great to get back together. 24th of November as well. Put that one in your diary. That's hopefully, you've teed me up beautifully for that. But that's hopefully our return for ARC360 at the British Motor Museum. So fingers crossed, all goes accordingly. And Rick, same thing for you. Obviously, a very different business to Richard's, but your relationships all round. How's the business been supported? Have you found yourself, opening up a whole new world in terms of conversations that you've had with fellow repairers and others?
Yeah, I think fellow repairers, I've been on steering committees before, so I know a lot of repairers sort of quite personally. We quite often share information, help each other out. Certainly in the early days when there was only a few of us open, we were getting quite a few phone calls, especially on lockdown. Your phone went mad that night to say, are we able to open, are we not able to open? Insurance companies, probably we've got a lot of small contracts rather than a lot of large, or one large contract, and Innovation Group being probably the biggest worker supply. They were excellent, on the phone quite a bit, going out of their way to get stuff authorised, helping us as part of the parts supply. Morelli's were going out of their way, picking stuff up for us, and that stuff. So to be fair, a lot of people around us, we've had a massive support from work providers, supply of parts, paint, a lot really. So and we've helped you talk to other body shops. A lot of body shops are phoning and saying, can you get BM bits or these bits, and we were sort of helping each other out to where we could get supply from. So yeah, it was quite very interesting.
Very interesting. You said extended the network. That's what it is.
Yeah.
And Chris, so we are kind of in that place now where we've obviously just looked at August and thoughts around there. We've looked towards the end of the year, the here and now. So as restrictions are eased and we're encouraged to go back to work, business support packages are, you've already mentioned what's happening with the furlough, how that's changing. And Richard's already alluded to cash is still king. Let's not forget that. We reiterated that very early on. That was a real key message. What is the here and now in terms of your kind of advice to repairers? What's the key things that they really need to be mindful of?
Making decisions about their people and staffing is going to be critical. It really is. If they keep too many people, they're not going to be running efficiently. They're going to lose money. If they don't have enough people, they're not going to be able to put through enough work to cover their fixed costs and make profit. Decisions like that are going to be critical to them. And, we as an association have got to give them as much help and advice and support as possible to get that sort of balance right. Obviously, we need to help. I don't know really what Brexit is going to mean for them, but, that is looming up on the horizon. We can't forget about that either. We need to make sure that doesn't sort of negatively impact our members. I think we could do a better job of being prepared for a second wave if it does come. It's quite understandable that when this first hit us, it was brand new for everybody. Nobody knew what to do. Nobody knew how long it was going to go on or what impact it would have on claims, everything. So consequently, like everything, it's similar to that. Everybody invents the wheel, and that's pretty much what happened with, all of the insurers going down their own path and all repairers going down the path, and we've slowly kind of congregated towards things that we think are about the right thing to do. But they're not necessarily right. You know, we haven't necessarily ended up in the right place. You know, there's still a lack of understanding of the investment that repairers are required to put in to adapt their businesses and to keep their customers safe. You know, there's some whopping disparities actually between, you know, some of the CSR statements on some corporate websites, you know, and what is required of repairers to deliver for their customers. Juxtapose that with, you know, some frontline engineers, area managers, no disrespect to any might be on, who haven't necessarily been given any kind of training, any kind of education. And consequently, they're going in saying, all this needs is a quick wipe over. You know, that's an actual quote from an engineer to a business that have invested thousands and thousands of pounds in safeguarding that insurance customers. So, you know, there's a whole bunch of things like that. But beyond that, you know, we still need to move forward as businesses. The MDRA are very much planning on, you know, we've made savings in our business so we can invest directly in membership support services. There's a lot we're doing this year, you know, without doing a sort of an MDRA pitch, website, dispute resolution, new database. We want to do a body shop dating service. Still need to crack that courtesy car issue. Sick to death of, you know, repairers having to pay for fault mobility. And as you know, as Richard said, this whole thing about parts, which is like a little cancer that's going on at the moment. You know, Ford, after sort of doing what they did the first time round and cutting the discounts, seem to have gone in for a second bite at the cherry. You know, and even more discounts seem to be going away, and you've got other manufacturers going down that route, and it's largely, you know, it's not being spoken about. And all the time it's not being spoken about, as Richard said, you know, one of the 4 lines of gross profit that body shops can achieve, parts, is disappearing, it's eroding, and nothing else is coming in its place to compensate it. So, you know, we've got a hell of a lot to do to get those things right, and it's going to be a tough time for repairers. We just want to support them all the way through it.
Yeah. And going back to kind of your initial piece there on the people, and I know it's kind of how long is a piece of string, but you know, how long can you wait for these things? Or is this just going to become an automatic sort of timeline for most repairers where it's actually, you know, this is kind of make or break and I've got to make those decisions now?
I mean, I'll let Richard, you know, I think sort of September is going to be critical. You know, I don't think if there's a big upturn at that point when schools go back and, you know, after the government has tried to get people to go back to work, if they possibly can go back to work, and the job retention scheme starts to evaporate, you know, that's going to be the crucible moment where decisions need to be made. You know, I don't think people are going to be able to leave it much longer than that. Well, you know, once you get to the end of October, of course, it's gone. You know, the whole scheme, 31st of October, the scheme is gone. And, you know, let's work out on a scenario where there's a bit of a second wave. Let's say maybe the 60% goes down to 40 or 50% of normal claims volumes. And then you're forced with what? You know, paying full wages for 100% of your staff when you've only got half the work. You know, decisions do need to be made. And it's really, you know, I think we do need to come together more than ever as an industry to really help each other make sure that decision making is as simple and as well informed as possible so people get it right. Otherwise, it's going to be really, really tough.
Fair comments there, Richard, from Chris in terms of that kind of, you know, critical timeline, or do you, you know, did you gear for it anyway? And again, you know, there's always that argument that you get to October, do people then, you know, do the winter dance and hope for a bad winter and fall into that cycle? So that there's, you know, so many sort of different ways to look at it, I suppose.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, we need referrals to employ staff. and as one is a direct line to the other. We've already seen, as Chris alluded to earlier, petrol retail 80%, but 80% of driven miles does not generate 80% of claims. I've not seen the study yet that says where the two lines actually separate, but 100% of driven miles driven as given the claims before. We're measuring like. We're clearly seeing that 80% of driven miles now, which has been what's been the case for the last few weeks, is only generating 60% of the claims volume, and that's a natural given thing. So from our perspective, we're looking very closely at where we see a step change in our referrals. We actually put, as I said earlier, a fresh wave of people on furlough on the very last day that we could rejoin the scheme. That was the first time that they'd actually gone on furlough, and that was on the 10th of June. And that was why, was because we didn't actually have the claims capability at that stage then to support the amount of staff we had in the business. So it was a balancing act. I brought 35 back a week before, and I think we put 19 new guys on furlough at that stage. So it's a constant balancing act. But we've done our numbers based on if everybody now is going to be off until the 1st of November, what are the commensurate costs for the business? And they are into six figures. So we would have effectively, as we stand here today, over £100,000 worth of cost just purely from keeping people away until the 1st of November, and then all of the payroll comes back on board. And then if you haven't got the claims in, then you've got to look at maybe potentially redundancy programs, which clearly everyone's desperate to try and avoid, which also costs an awful lot of money as well. So it's just about, all of this is about planning as best you can with your individual situation and making sure that you apply the best knowledge that you can in your business experience. I had a chat with Chris when this first kicked off and said, look, now's a chance for the MBRA to really step up and fill a void that I think is there in terms of sending out information to the community that we could then use. And I have circulated to my internal team almost on a bi-daily basis information that's been I've gleaned automatically from there. And we've really welcomed that support in terms of what that's provided for us around changes in the scheme, because apart from trying to run a business on one hand and manage, XT people off on furlough, you've also ultimately got to stay ahead of what's happening in the respective furlough schemes, the government support. I still notice and hear that some repairers haven't made applications for the grants and rates relief. Why? Why wouldn't you do that? It's a win. I know it's a challenge sometimes to get through certain councils, but you've got to really push hard for that, because this is where we need to be basically all pulling together as a community and making sure that we're all on the same page. And I've said historically, there isn't really winners out of this. There's just survivors. And the most important thing is that as many of us survive out the other side of it as well. And we still have an ecosystem that can provide a service to the clients of our accident management, their customers, the accident managers and insurers going forward. Because if there was no repairers at all in the UK, the public will still be having accidents. So we are a required necessary in this industry, and we've got no intention of going anywhere. So although I'm typically very upbeat and bullish, everyone knows my style, that tends to be where I tend to be, it's automatically tinged with an element of caution because we don't know what we're faced with going forward. But clearly it's obviously a concern.
All right, absolutely. Right, we're into the last 10 minutes. I'll just bring up the final poll for today whilst we're on the subject of people, but we're going to move on a little bit. So what is the current status of your business when it comes to staffing? So furlough stroke volume balance continues. So again, as we've discussed, that kind of juggling act, looking to bring more people on board, again with reference at some new sites opening, etc., or in the process of streamlining the headcount. So Rick, I'm going to jump across to you and just move the conversation on. So, will your business or will the industry ever be the same again as far as you're concerned? Will your business adapt, evolve to become something that it's not currently been, or whatever it might be?
Yeah, I'd like to think it's changed. I mean, I suppose this has given us time to look at the business and see what elements of the business are important and what you've got to work on. I think we probably won't staff to where we were before. I think we've quite enjoyed. I think one of the things we've noticed the last 2 weeks is the amount of phone calls from insurance companies for updates. Sometimes 3 times for the same vehicle. And when we're only short-staffed, I've been hands-on the business quite a lot at the moment because I've got to. And you're bombarded by phone calls again. And suddenly you've gone from being able to spend your time doing estimates and actually make sure you've covered everything to insurance companies chasing SLAs and wanting you to give it, when's this in, when that's in, when did you get authority for it? When you get it 3 times the same, it drives you mad. I think we need to work on things like the caps, communication, all these different online tracking schemes. You've got 7 different insurance companies, 7 different schemes that could be centralised. So I think there's a lot of work with repairers and insurance companies to try and cut some of the admin out of it, because if you make the workshop slightly smaller, you'll then got a bigger ratio of people repairing cars to people in the office. But I think I'd like to sort of bring it back a touch, just so we can give a bit more quality, to customers, to estimating, to our communication. I think, as Richard said, there's a storm coming, September, October, when the Furlough Scheme. At the minute, it's wallpapering over cracks in our industry. And I think it's going to be difficult for groups and for small independents. I think we've always adapted very quickly to current situations, put our eggs in a lot of different baskets, safeguarded ourselves. But I think we want to change things. I think how we achieve that is going to be the big challenge for us going forward. But at the moment, it is very much survival of the fittest. And we just want to make sure we're in the camp and, we protect the business as best as we can and still keep providing service for customers.
Okay. Great stuff. Thanks, Rick. That's a great insight again. And just having a quick look at the results that we got there. So the juggling act continues for 57%. So 21% looking to bring on new, more people on board. That's great. And in the process of streamlining headcount, 21% as well. So again, a mixed bag there. Richard, it'll come across to you. We've kind of got a few minutes remaining, but from a repairer's perspective, what is it that you can do differently, perhaps? You might stem from this that something, comes from this that actually, we've been missing a trick all these years, or there's a way that we can change our business for the better, offer customers, whether that be insurers or individual drivers themselves, something different.
I think one of the challenges, look back to Ian Pugh a few webinars ago had mentioned about something like a Cobra committee potentially being brought forward. I don't know whether anything's happened with that or not. I've not seen or heard anything myself, but it may well be happening in the background. That would have been potentially a welcome opportunity. Part of the challenge is that people are very reluctant, to give up their competitive advantages, and this is one of the ongoing challenges that you have in industry that is controlled by large corporates, be it vehicle manufacturers or be it insurers, large accident managers, and obviously repairers. So I think I would say it's probably currently looks like a lost opportunity. It would be a shame if it was a lost opportunity. We didn't take a chance to do things differently. Slightly concerned here. Rick there facing increased call activity into him 3 times for the same job. You've got claims handlers who've been furloughed are coming back now as well. They're getting up to speed as well. And obviously their job is to inform the clients. I think people forget the COVID crisis very quickly. It's amazing how quickly it sort of seems to be, in some respects, going into the past, yet it's still very much now. And as we've already said, worldwide cases are exploding. So that's more of a bigger concern. So I think it would be a shame if we didn't take advantage to use technology in various different ways to reduce friction, improve efficiencies, speed up cycle times, improve customer service. Why can't we achieve that? And I think it's actually there to be achieved. And a lot of technology's already in play, and there's some new AI solutions coming to the fore that we can bring more to the table. There, updates without use of phones, they're already there and in place. More people should be using those wherever possible as well. Entrusting us to get on and do our jobs and allow us to work with the policyholder, with the customer to deliver the most satisfactory experience for them. So making sure the SLAs match and fit that. People have been very accommodating and understanding in what's gone on in the last 10 or 12 weeks for repairers. So those would be the sort of things I'd like to see going forward, obviously in what is still going to be a very fluid and changing time.
Brilliant. All right, thank you very much, Richard. And Chris, we'll come across to you for the final say. Again, kind of reiterating perhaps what Richard's already said, but where are we, if you like, moving ahead? What would you like to see? and what are the points that you really want to raise for body shops, if you like, and you've got about 3 minutes to do it.
Yeah, look, I mean, I'll keep it very high level. All the time that I've been at MBRA, I've really wanted to see the market mature and evolve, and get real collaboration. We're getting somewhere with it. We've got our insurer advisory board that's sort of growing, and it seems to be doing quite well. I want us to pick up on, very much as sort of Richard said, this would be a huge lost opportunity if we don't use the meteoric impact of coronavirus as a catalyst to start maturely debating the issues that affect the industry all the way across. And this isn't, a repairer sort of led thing. We have to find win-wins. If you spend enough time talking about any problem, there's a win-win in it for everyone. If you think hard enough and you debate it hard enough, there's always a way if you've got the energy to do it. And that is exactly what I'm hoping for, coming out of this. And we'll be sort of pushing for that to happen, picking up on the big subjects that never really leave our industry. Nobody ever puts the ball in the back of the net. We just talk about it. Let's get some of these done. And that is very much what I want to see. Everybody pulling together to resolve some of the sticky problems that have been sticking around for so long and really have the energy to fix them.
Brilliant. Great close to a webinar. Like the football analogy, being a Watford fan because of the troubles we face, but there you go. So great webinar once again. Thank you very much indeed for you guys for taking part and sharing your honest and open insight. Rick, Chris and Richard, superb. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much to everybody for joining us once again for Webinar Wednesday, and really appreciate all the communications. Let these guys know what you thought about the session. Send some messages through in the chats. I'll scoop them all up as we go. Huge thank you, obviously, to our corporate partners, ASIS, BMS, CAPS, Copart, EMAX, Integral, Enterprise Rent-A-Car, Nationwide Vehicle Recovery Assistance, S&G Response, and our partners, the Green Part Specialists in DARSA and the Innovation Group. Once again, thank you very much, Rick, Chris and Richard. Thank you for everyone for joining us. Have a fantastic week, and we'll see you again next Wednesday. Take care, everybody.